Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Funky Marketing Show. I think this is the first one that we are live streaming at this time, so I'm excited to see how it's going to go and who's going to engage with us. But today I have a pleasure to host someone that I'm seeing a lot on LinkedIn, and she's talking about different topics. From how to help startups, from ground zero to develop their marketing team and accelerate the growth, but also how to help executives, thrive and grow in this, challenging time we are living in. And, if I'm not going to go and tell you her bio, because this is the conversation that we're going to have and you'll learn. But today, Maya Grossman is joining me. She's VP of Marketing, ex-Google, Microsoft. She's the best-selling author, startup advisor, and lots of other things. And join me in welcoming Maya to the show. And the first question I have, how old are you? And, looking at the things that you have done so far.
Oh my gosh, starting with how old I am. Okay, I actually turned 40 this year. And I'm very proud to say that because I've learned so much throughout my career. And to your point earlier, I'm a marketer, I'm a career coach, I'm an author. And it's been a really interesting journey to kind of combine all of these together and figure out what makes me happy.
Yeah, I think we all know I'm like 37 going into 38. I think that's the time when we actually figure out, what are the things that makes us happy and, have kind of a balance. It doesn't need to be one thing that we are doing. It can be lots of other stuff combined together along with, with things we do outside of work.
I know, but for the longest time, I thought the only way to be fulfilled is to have a great job. I didn't really think about anything outside of my job. I only focused on, I need to be a marketer and I need to be the best marketer. And then a couple of years ago, almost by mistake, I was talking to a couple of people. I was giving career advice, something I've done for the past 15 years, but I was repeating the same advice. So I ended up writing it down, and somehow that career advice turned into a book. And I realized, hey, I can do other things that really make me happy, and I can even bring them together and do marketing and career coaching and help, to your point, startups, right? But also help the executives who are stepping in and building their career in marketing.
Yeah, that's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Like, how much did actually publishing a book help you in accelerating the career and maybe nailing the way you want to go, or maybe giving you different perspectives on the journey?
Yeah. Well, honestly, the reason why I actually decided to write the book is I wanted to help more people. So my one word, the one thing that drives me is impact. And it was never about how many books I can sell, but rather how many people can I help. And I think in doing that, I also thought, okay, how can I get people to even know that I wrote a book, right? I'm not this famous author. I'm not a celebrity. So I started posting some of my advice on LinkedIn, and slowly I built a community. And I think that aspect, building in public and serving other people and sharing advice, that is what really helped move my career forward, because it just helped establish some of my work, as helpful, and it helped establish me as a bit of an expert in my field. And it doesn't hurt to tell people I wrote a book, but I don't think that aspect necessarily opens doors. It's more about what you do in the day-to-day and how you help people.
Yeah, actually, the whole process of writing a book is and actually building the community around it. That's something that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
As they say, like you're actually selling the book while you're writing it, like sharing the snippet, sharing advice and everything else. And then, what you're going to do next? Well, you already have a community, have people over there that know who you are and respect you for that. Then you have, the book. Okay, I'm the authority, but I have the book also to prove it. And then you can move on.
Yeah, and it's been a fun journey. I got to meet so many amazing people. So, funny story, when I started writing the book, I wrote a couple of chapters and I asked my husband, who is my best friend, to take a look. And he read the first couple of chapters and he said, "Babe, I love you, but this is not good. You can do so much better. I've seen you write so much better." And I couldn't figure out what was not working. So I was building the community at the time. I was sharing content and I just asked people, "Hey, would you jump on a call with me? I want to give you free career advice." And just by talking to people, and I ended up doing more than 100 free career coaching calls. Like a good marketer, I wanted to do customer research and I learned what people cared about, what were their biggest problems, and more importantly, how they want to be communicated, how they want to consume that information. And what I learned is that people really want stories. They don't just want the template or the playbook, they want to see how things happen in real life. And that's why I decided to incorporate so many of my own personal stories just to make it more relatable and show people some of the wins, but also a lot of the failures so they can avoid them. But just acting like a marketer really helped me create a book that resonates with people.
Yeah, it reminds me of what I've been doing this morning. I've been writing my about section because we redesigned the website and did the change in messaging. And like those words you are saying, I think something similar is in my about section. So it's good to know that I'm on the right way. But tell me, there is one thing that got my attention, and I want to ask you so we can get into the conversation into more details. And you said you are designing experiences that take prospects from thinking what is this to saying I want this. And I think this is the question that lots of companies ask themselves. How can I do this? So maybe you can go a little bit into that.
Yeah, of course. It actually goes back to what I just mentioned about customer development. So I think too often companies or marketers make the mistake of thinking, "Oh, I just need to define my ideal customer and then I'm going to outline all of my features and sell them." But that doesn't necessarily make people care. People care about things that impact them. They either want to increase pleasure or avoid pain. And unless you actually have a conversation with your customer, you may miss out on some of the most important aspects of that. Because if you're not the target customer, and even if you are, one person is not enough, you really want to understand how your customers think. So, in going from what is this to I want this, you actually go through the customer journey. You talk to people, and here's one of the biggest things that people ask me: "Okay, great, I want to talk to my customers, but what does that mean?" And they come up with a list of questions, and those questions are always targeted at their product and their features. And what I say is actually very different. Go have a conversation with your customers with no agenda. Just listen to them. Just ask them, "What does your day to day look like? How do what are your biggest challenges? How have you been solving those challenges so far?" You know what? Even talk to them about their latest vacation. Just build a relationship and let them tell the story from their perspective. And the more you do that, the more you realize, hey, there's actually a trend. A lot of our potential customers are saying the same thing. And when you actually focus on what they need, not what you're trying to sell, everything changes. That's when you can use their own words to sell your product. And that's what I've done throughout my career to really help companies differentiate in really busy and competitive markets.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, knowing your customers and who you're talking to is so important, and we repeat it at least on this podcast, almost in every episode. and still people don't get deep enough into those things, because you need to understand your customers, on a deeper level than just business. I
Amen.
remember talking about MBA, about fishing, about different things, and seeing, okay, 3 out of 4 custom types of customers that we defined as ICPs, love fishing. So that's something else that we can connect them about. And then, one thing that you mentioned, and I want to get a little bit into that, is, knowing their pains and knowing frustrations, those kind of things, but also not emphasizing maybe those things in communicating with them. Because what I see is there are lots of people that are, maybe not ready to say that they have this problem and talk about it, or they're insecure. But if you make it as, if you connect the trend and you make it as something which is bigger than themselves, a big change that is happening, then they might feel different about talking around those topics.
Yeah, it's about building a relationship. And I think that is what scares people the most because let's be honest, if you work for a startup, for example, things are pretty hectic. Things move really quickly. There are expectations. You need to drive revenue, especially if you're, an executive. And it's almost like, oh, it's not important to talk to customers. It's a waste of time. It's just talking. But from my experience, that's the one thing that will impact everything else that you do and will actually allow you to use all of that time and effort to do something that drives the needle. But people are really scared. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit intimidated when I was supposed to start talking to customers at first because it's kind of weird. And even just reaching out to them is like, hey, I just want to talk to you. But it's actually a great experience, especially for marketers, because it's a little bit closer to what the sales team would probably do. And that's something that you want to experience. You want to see people's objections live. You want to hear how they're framing the value that you're creating. And more often than not, they're going to give you the answer. I don't understand why people are so scared of it. It's almost like getting the answers to a test before you actually go in and take that exam. And who wouldn't want to do that? You're getting a free pass. So it's just about investing a little bit of time and effort to really understand where your customers are coming from instead of sitting in a room and trying to decide what they want. I've seen so many marketers do that. It's the corporate culture. They all sit in a room and they're like, I think, our customers are going to need X, Y, Z. And you know what? Maybe that's a good place to start, but then go and validate that. Go and have those conversations so it's not just in your head, it's actually what your customers want.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think lots of marketers are still scared of how to do that or go into those conversations or actually listening to the sales calls, or if they have customer success teams, also listen to their calls. And we are still used to be in a safe zone. We create events, we do webinars, we promote them, and here are the leads. You do whatever you want with them. We are not interested in that. I think marketers are started to understand that this part of their journey is over. Like, marketers who are still doing that will end up not being validated for their work, and possibly working in some companies that don't even care about marketing, about the things that they are doing. But what's interesting is that today you can hear those customers of yours on different podcasts. It doesn't have to be the call that you are doing with them. And when it comes to being scared of doing those things, you know just saying to a customer, like, listen, I'm the new CMO in the company, and I'm here to see how I can help you better use your products and get the better value of the money you're spending with us. Like, everybody will jump in and tell you all the things that they can remember to help you help them, right?
Yeah. And it's okay if you hear a no. if you're sending 10 emails and 2 people want to talk to you, that's amazing. You don't need all 10 people. I mean, I know as a VP of marketing, I got dozens of emails every single day. And sometimes I have the time and the capacity, and sometimes I don't. And that's perfectly fine. Hopefully you have more than 10 customers, but even if you don't, right, then you can still jump on sales calls, to your point. That's the minimum that you can do, because you want to hear how people ask questions. You want to know what they care about, and then you can use your marketing to already answer those questions. So when they get to sales, they're actually more qualified, meaning they actually know what problem you're solving. And hopefully they already know that they want your solution because you did a really good job explaining how you're going to help them. And to your point earlier, marketing is a massive and valuable part of the business. We drive revenue. If your team is not doing that, then you're not doing marketing. Marketing is not just brand. It's not just, writing blog posts, because if all of that doesn't actually convert into dollars, then you're not doing your job. And I think it's a huge and important shift, because that makes marketing that much more important. That is what makes our work that much more impactful. And at least for me, that's a huge bonus in my day-to-day, that I know that I get to help a company grow from 0 to 5 million, or from 5 million to 10 million in ARR. I mean, I don't know. That's why I do what I do. Why are you doing it?
Yeah, exactly. Uh, Here's a question: marketers should actually be on the sales calls. I guess Amir is ironic, but
Yeah.
there's this thing: they don't need to be on the call. They can just be a silent listener. That's also okay.
Yeah, I would say there are different value proposition in doing different things, right? If you're just listening, if you have Gong or something like that, and you're listening after the call, that's great. You're going to learn the basics. I 100% recommend that you do that. You can do it on your own time. I actually used to listen during when I'm cooking, when I'm running. I actually listen to sales calls. That's step number one. You can actually join a call. I would take it a step further. If you really want to experience it, try doing sales calls yourself. Maybe don't jump into like the full thing. Maybe start with qualification, right? Do an SDR's job. Reach out to customers who want to take a demo and just kind of qualify them and ask them the questions. And lastly, again, this is probably best case scenario, but I would highly recommend that you do it. Have a one-on-one conversation, and don't be specific about your own product. Just talk to them about the problem and the space that you're working in, and you will find things that you never thought possible. I can give you a great example. In one of my previous companies, the VP of product and myself, we went out on a road trip. We wanted to talk to customers. So we literally had this type of conversation. Hey, how are you doing? What's up? We also wanted to check about a new feature that we were launching, but we kept that to the end of the conversation. And what happened was, after talking to about 10 or 12 customers, we learned about a new problem that we never knew existed. There was a very specific reason they were not, signing up as quickly or staying with us long enough. And it was a problem that was relatively easy to fix. We just didn't know it existed, because we don't know their day-to-day. We don't understand how their mind thinks. And by having a super simple conversation of like, what is your biggest problem? Why are you not happy? What can we do better? And my favorite question: if you had a magic wand and you can change one thing about our product to make it really great, what would it be? And it was amazing to see about 10 out of 12 people said the same thing. And we went back and we completely changed our roadmap, and we fixed that problem instead of launching a new feature. And it had a phenomenal impact on our growth.
Yeah, because that thing is the one that comes after, after they know what you're all about, what they are all about, what's the promised land, and then you come reaching out to them and asking them, about the things like, I like to compare that as, Star Wars, maybe a lightsaber. That's it. That's the thing that you ask them. To go a little bit into epic fantasy as well, not only into the fairy tales, but actually those things are really connected and really important. And if you have a chance now in these pandemic times to go to the customers offline and actually have a conversation, uh, have a lunch, whatever, with them and just get to know them, the feeling when you're talking with them and they can get talking to you, it means a lot.
Yeah, and there's a really nice hack to do that also, by the way. If you want to start a podcast and literally interview your ICP, you're going to learn a lot through those conversations while creating a lot of great marketing content for your demand engine. So I wouldn't say it's instead, it's, in addition to actually having those conversations. But look, if you just joined a new company, right? It's your first 30, maybe 60 days, you can probably afford to spend 10 hours speaking to 10 to 15 customers to really learn what they need, because that will impact how you build your strategy. That will impact who you actually recruit for your team. It's going to impact everything. So I would say start with that.
Yeah. I didn't want to say that because I'm saying that all the time. Thank you for saying that. And I mean, usually when marketing comes into the company, there's a sales team out there. Usually that's the situation, and sales team usually have at least like 100 sales accounts they want to close. So just using that and inviting all those people on the podcast as a long-term relationships that needs to be built, it means a lot and it accelerate the growth a lot, and it helps you not only with connecting with them and closing those accounts, but also, as we talked about, developing the product further or the services, whatever it is, seeing what are the touch points that you are maybe missing, how's the decision making process going, where do they go to look for a vendor when they need it, or the way to get where they go to educate themselves. Those are all important things that you can find out only if you talk to those people. Like I remember working with a company that had an ICP of developers, and it's hard these days to get developers because they are in the
It's
small communities.
very tough. And they
Yeah,
also don't like marketing.
of course. I mean, they're on LinkedIn basically, they're running away from it because they just get spammed by recruiters and by offers and those kind of things. But you know what? What did we find by interviewing them? We found out that, that um, they're into the small communities, especially those from the companies they were talking with, are in the small communities that are gathering around board games because they want to actually work with other developers. They're into board games because others would be bored if they don't play them. And also, what we find out is that the content that they are seeing around those topics that we ask them is not good. So what the company did is, ask one of their developers if they would, for the same salary, if they would change the position and start writing content for developers. And it
Okay.
changed the shift.
That is, first of all, that is phenomenal, because what most companies would do is go and hire a copywriter that knows absolutely nothing about your industry and create generic content. The fact that you already
Hmm.
went to an SME, to an expert, that is probably the best advice I can give marketers. And I've seen it over and over again where I join companies and, oh, we work with these two external copywriters. And while I appreciate that you can learn about a topic, it is so different when you have an expert. And that's why I love the podcast idea, because you don't have to create the content. You don't have to be the
Yes.
expert. You can bring in other people and learn from them. And in that way, you learn, but also you help the community grow and learn. So I love that you did that. That is a huge and valuable tip for anyone listening. If you really want to create meaningful, valuable content, you need someone who's an expert to actually write it. Yes, you can create some SEO generic evergreen content. I actually don't believe that's the winning strategy in 2021, almost 2022.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because, like, I mean, it all depends who's your target group, but still, you need to write those articles for the people and, to actually give a new perspective on the things, not to target the keywords. That's the main
Yeah.
difference.
The point is adding value, not adding blog posts to your blog. It's much better to have 10 pieces of content that people actually read and enjoy than having 100 that no one actually sees.
Yeah, and I wanted to clarify one thing because usually we talk about the things and we just mention add value, but we don't explain it. So I think it becomes one of these generic advices that we all give. But in this case, if lots of people have been talking about the one topic, what you can do is you can try to get a little bit into top leadership and bring in new perspectives on things. So, for example, how you are doing things differently than the others. What do you see that others don't see? Those kind of things. And then it's the top content on the same topic, but with a new perspective. And it get differentiated when people are looking for it to find.
Yeah, and I would say experience. If this is something you've actually done, or if this is an SME writing, an expert writing, and they can share their own experience, even if it's the same advice, just coming from someone who went through the process and can add the actual details and can really explain what it looks like. I think that's really valuable. And that's actually a lesson I learned about my content on LinkedIn. So when I started, a lot of the content was like very inspirational, big quotes, and it doesn't always really resonate with people because it's what I call fluff, right? So sometimes it's nice to see it and you kind of nod, but you don't get anything out of it. You can take it
Yes.
and actually put it into practice. So I changed my content and I try to write the most practical advice I can share. Like, here are 3 things you can do right now, or here's how to do it so that you would actually see the benefit. And that what ended up resonating with people, the fact that they can actually put it to use. And I think it's the same for your company. If you really put content out there that is valuable and people can use it, I think that is what will end up resonating with them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, depending on what is the platform we're talking about, but doing that with uh, content that is that they can go and execute right away, or the content that is related to to other people that they know. So including other people in creating content, and then basically you're thinking about distribution ahead.
Yeah, and I actually would add here, so this is probably controversial, but I don't believe in gating content. I think that's old school. I think you need to give as much value upfront to your potential customers so they build in their head that you are giving them value, that you are an expert, that you know what you're doing. You don't need to keep them hostage with an email. By the way, most people don't even use their own email anymore. There are temp emails. So I just believe in giving everything that you can give for free to really build that relationship and trust. And then people come to you. And I've done it over and over again in my business and for other companies. And it works. It just works.
Same experience. So yeah, we agree on that. So tell me, let's talk hypothetically. If we are a startup and we are in a phase that we need to start building a marketing team, what's that phase? When do we as a startup think that we need marketing, or how does that happen? Because there are lots of conversations around that. Should we add marketing from the start, or we add it later, or how does it go? What's your experience?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's definitely going to vary. It depends on the industry. It depends on the CEO. But as a rule of thumb, I would say this. I would probably think about bringing different types of marketers at different times of the company growth. So, for example, if you're relatively early on and you're still trying to figure out who your audience is, that might be a great time to hire a product marketing expert because they can really help you with going to market and really understanding who your customer is, what we just talked about, They can help you build the messaging and the positioning. They can build the initial sales enablement. So even if you have one salesperson, they can really help you build that story and see what works. So if it's very early on, maybe a product marketer. When you have something that works, when you know, okay, this is my ICP, now I need to go and scale this. This is when you want to bring in a demand expert and potentially marketing ops. That's actually a big one. I used to wait to hire marketing ops, and now I think it's one of the first people you need to bring on board, because you want to build the infrastructure and you want to build it right from the get-go, because fixing it later and updating Salesforce or whatever you're using is not fun. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks.
And it
You do not
costs.
want to do that. It costs a lot of money as well. And I think that's also a good time to start thinking about bringing in a marketing leader, right? You want that executive that can start thinking strategically. So if you have something that works, even if it's small, and you want to scale it, that's step number one. But now you need to think about the next quarter and the next year, and how do you double revenue, not just grow it by 10%. And that's when you want to bring in a leader and someone who can really work with the CEO, work with the executive team to think about the future and not just the day-to-day.
Yeah. So it gets me to the question that I've seen, I think, a couple of weeks ago, who talked about it. I think Gaetano Dinardi, my friend from Brooklyn, and some other people, seeing like different VPs of marketing and CMOs, not knowing how to, go into the CRM and check out things on their own or do those kind of stuff to kind of get their heads in the dirt and check some things on their own instead of waiting for somebody from the team to actually give them the reports or anything. So what's your take on that? Should they just be somebody that builds a team, thinks strategically, do things from that level, or they should be somebody that has also done things before and has built themselves up to that point when they can now talk about the strategy. Now they know who they need in the team for it to be successful, and on and on.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer, because I've seen both work. And I think it also really depends on the company and organization. If you're working for a smaller startup and you have a tiny team, then you'll probably be expected to do some hands-on work. So you definitely need to know a little bit more. I think what is very important for a leader is to not necessarily understand how to go into the systems, but how to analyze the data. So you may not know how to use the CRM, but if you get the report and you look at the data and you can turn it into insights because you have enough experience, because you understand how customers think, because you understand your own market, I think that's where you bring a lot of value. It doesn't hurt to know how to actually use those systems, but I'm going to be honest, I'm probably not, the biggest expert in SEO. I don't know how to create millions of dashboards in Google Analytics, but that doesn't mean I don't know how to ask the right questions and get the information that I need to make decisions. So I think it's a balance. And I think where I saw the most success for marketing leaders is they are experts in at least one specific field. And for some reason, when CEOs are looking to hire, they are looking for a unicorn. They want a marketer who is an expert in everything. They're an expert in product marketing and demand gen and brand and PR. First and foremost, that does not exist. I don't know anyone who can do everything that well. And if you do, I would like to meet them. But if you own your own discipline and you're very good at what you do, and then you know how to hire people who are 10 times better than you in everything else, that's how you bring the most value, because you can then connect the dots. You can be the driver of the strategy. You can set the North Star, and you can trust your people because they're experts to do an incredible job actually executing on your vision.
Yeah, I agree. It depends. There are tons of different situations, and it all depends who you need in the company. But as a CEO, you need to know that now becomes the burden you need to carry on.
Well, I definitely tell that to CEOs whenever I do consulting. I try to align expectations and help them figure out what should they expect their VP or CMO to do, and also who to look for. For some companies, that product marketer would actually do a better job, and for others, they want the demand expert. And once you figure out what direction you want to go, the hiring process also becomes easier because you actually know what to expect and you can evaluate people on the results that you want to drive and not on some really broad spectrum of capabilities.
Yeah, agreed. Amir asked another question. I think we can maybe elaborate a little bit about it. I guess he joined us a bit later because you talked about marketing being responsible for the revenue and results and those kind of things. But he asked, like, can we also talk about the conversation these days about how marketing will be accountable for revenue, like sales is? So maybe we can go and dig a little bit deeper. How do you see marketing contributing to the results?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shifts, and it's been going on for a while, is moving from thinking about leads, which I'm going to be honest, you can pay 75 cents and use Zoom Info and get leads. You don't actually need to do marketing work to go there. So shifting from that mindset to thinking a lot further down the funnel. How do I either generate qualified pipelines or even revenue? And that means that marketing is more accountable. That means that we need to change our strategies and our tactics so we don't just collect emails. We actually change minds and hearts. We get people to come to us, but when they come to us, they're prepared. And it's a very different approach. And I think it's even more of an accountability play with sales, because I have to tell you, when you send shitty leads to sales, a lot of bad things happen because they don't want to work with you. They don't want to qualify them. And that we are working to achieve the same goal, the same result. So when you work closely with sales and you are able to bring them people who already want to buy, you build that symbiotic relationship that really drives growth for the company. And it's not easy. It sounds easy. Oh, just be friends. It's not that
Yeah,
easy. You really need to
like
align and have tons and tons of conversations and do it over and over again, and review your pipeline together and have coffee with your VP of sales to make sure that their SDRs are actually qualifying marketing leads, blah blah. There's a lot that goes into it, but I think the main shift is from generating leads, mass marketing, to really being specific about the people that you bring into the pipeline and how you work together with sales to target the same people, to share the same message, and just really build a strong brand that people understand and want to buy.
Yeah. Do you think it's related to the development of the tech? I think it's very much related to the shift that we have, because in the past we couldn't measure marketing any other way. So they say, okay, let's measure them on leads, and then when you measure them on leads, we had like the number needs to grow, and then we end up in the moment where as you mentioned, sales says marketing fucked up again. These people are not interesting to buy. And I think tech now allows us to actually see the value of marketing, how it impacts the whole company and the whole pipeline, and basically it brings marketing to the table with sales, with executives, with customer success, and all other teams.
Yeah, and we also have to be okay with the fact that we can't measure everything. That's also part of the problem, right? Because we talked about a podcast before. It's actually hard to see direct correlation between building a podcast to your bottom line numbers, right? It takes time, and you can't always say, oh, out of the 100 people who download the episode, here's one that actually bought. But you can see the shift in mindset. You can see people starting to come to you. You can see how you're driving. In my previous company, when we started our podcast, we had to basically beg people to come and be guests, right? Because no one wants to be the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And about 6 months into it, I had people coming to us and begging to be on the podcast. And that's a great example to show you that if you build a good, strategy, if you have the right content, it will start spreading and it will help you build that trust. And the people who were coming to us, they were all our ICPs. They were all on our target list. And they were coming to us to ask, to be partners and to hear more and to be part of the conversation. And yes, it's a long-term play, but it's a much better way to generate what we call qualified leads and have a real conversation with people as opposed to just collecting emails. And there's nothing wrong with email, right? I like having the possibility to reach out to my customers, and you should still do that. But that shouldn't be the gate to actually having a conversation or adding value.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, people will soon realize as they start focusing on the long-term goals that, that they will get the short ones done as well if that happens. Short ones are also, unrolling as you set up for the long-term goals, because you don't think about transaction at the moment. You think about building a relationship, and that changes everything. People can feel it, and they can see if you are about transaction or if you are about bringing value and creating the relationship with them.
Yeah, but to be honest, if you're a marketing executive, expectations are going to be through the roof, right? No one wants to wait 12 to 18 months until you build a demand machine. So you need to balance the short term. So you need to have a few quick wins and show that you can actually create that pipeline while you're building for the long term. And that's probably one of the most challenging parts of being a leader, because you really have to balance both and help your team understand why you're doing both. And then manage your CEO's expectations, which is a whole nother story that we can get into.
Yeah, that's exactly where I want to go. But look, what's your take on kind of aligning marketing with sales, I mean, other teams when you just start? So, like one of the take that I had from Nicole Gates here on the podcast is that she basically set up the sales goals to be marketing goals from the start, and kind of got the sales in the same room with marketing and explain why these are their goals, how are they going to achieve it, just so marketing understands what sales is doing, and then kind of start building, get the first results, which are actually leads with webinars that are educating people, and then get the trust and be able to move things bit by bit to get to the next point.
Yeah, and I love that approach. I think the first thing I did with my sales leader is aligning on those goals. So especially because I was early into my role, it was basically, okay, what are your sales goals? What do you need me to do to make your team successful? So yes, making sure that there's alignment, but also in a way that marketing is serving sales. We had a weekly meeting where I asked, what are your top priorities? What do you need my team to deliver for you? And some days it was, sales enablement, or, sometimes it was, we really need to look at the pipeline. And we had a weekly meeting where we literally went over Salesforce and we looked into the pipeline and we all looked at the numbers and we all agreed on the numbers. And our product marketing team would meet with the AEs every 2 weeks to ask them, hey, what's not working? What do you need from us? So instead of working in silo, really accepting that we're building the same thing, we're moving towards the same goal, and the only way to achieve it is if we work together. And even on a personal note, right? I invited our VP of sales to lunch, to your point, and just had a real conversation and got to know them as a person to make sure that, we're building that friendship and that trust. So when things go wrong, and sometimes they go wrong, he has my back and I have his back, and we have a united front when we come in front of the executive team.
Yeah, that's so important. And let's talk about in this last part of the show. Let's talk about about leading teams today.
Yeah.
So we are actually there talking about about how managers can do it, how they can align different teams and those kind of things. But it's a hard position to be, because on one part you have the team, which you are actually working for them in a way, and they expect something for you. But on the other hand, you have the board, or the CEO who is also demanding you to get results, which are, sometimes different than what, other people from your team are interested in. And basically you're in the middle, and not many people talk about that position and how hard sometimes it is being in that position.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And I think one of my team members actually called it a buffer. You're my buffer.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the key here is transparency and communication. And here's what I mean. It sounds super simple and straightforward, but I think a lot of people don't do that. After every executive meeting, I would usually write a quick summary and I would share it in the next marketing meeting. Anything that, I can actually share with them in advance, because I wanted them to know what is happening every single week. How are we thinking about challenges? What's happening? What are we struggling with? Where did we have wins? I wanted them to have clarity, because here's what's happened. When you surprise people, when you just come to them and like, oh, the CEO changed his mind, we now need to do that, they're really frustrated. Mm-hmm. If they're part of the process, if they know, hey, we're actually considering this change, and if week over week they kind of hear we're going in a specific direction, then when that request comes in, they actually get it and they understand, and they're bought in and ready to do the work. So just trusting them with that information and giving them context and clarity has been super helpful for me. And it sounds like the easiest thing in the world, but it's actually very easy to miss. I didn't do it for the first couple of weeks in my new role because I was so busy, first 30 days, I need to change the world. And I kind of forgot. So now I use a template, and I actually share it in my coaching sessions, a template for marketing team meetings that already includes that kind of hand down from the executive leadership, so they always have the context they need.
Yeah, totally agree. And there's one thing I want to ask you as well is how much should we share with the team when it comes to the negative stuff that we are chasing, about not the challenges, but actually negative stuff that are happening? Because my experience is if you go over the line, you are basically sharing your burden with the team, and they don't need that burden.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think there's a difference between being honest and sharing your own burden. So when you show up as a leader, even when things don't go well, you still want to show up in the most positive way you can. I'm not saying lying, I'm not saying hide something, but even if something is going wrong, you need to be the rock, because if you don't feel confident, if you don't have a solution, your team will feel lost. But when it comes to sharing some of the bad things that are happening, I think it depends on context. If it would be helpful for them to know, then I will probably share it, right? If we had, for example, a customer who churned, I want them to know, I want them to understand why it happened, so they can take that into account when they build their own strategy or when they create content or whatever it is that we're doing. If we had a specific comment from the board that is more relevant to the executive team, I may not share everything in full detail. So you really have to use some judgment there to make sure that you're delivering the right messages and the right information. But I actually believe in being as transparent as possible. If I hired someone to do their job, that means I trust them. And in order to empower them to do their best work, they need information. If I keep hiding it from them, they will never do their best work. And then there's no point, of me hiring them. So if I trust people, I give them the information and I trust them to make the right decisions with that information.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a lot more challenging in a small team when there are like 10 people, because you easily fall into the trap. We are a small team, we should share everybody, but you have a creative, a designer, which he cannot affect the revenue directly, or he is not responsible for some of the things directly. He has somebody who is above him, who checks out the work and everything. He doesn't have direct line of communication with a client. And
Yeah.
if you keep sharing, we have this negative stuff, we don't know how we're going to survive the quarter, or those kind of things, then they started to think, and it affects the creativity, it affects the way they are doing the work, and you are actually doing something that is making them see they're like, it's all negative here when you come to the work, it's all negativity. So why don't I go somewhere else to work where there are people who are also sharing other stuff except that.
Yeah. I would argue that's actually not about the negative, because I can actually share an example in one of my previous companies where we had a bit of a challenge. We were going through a rough time with the company, and I did share it with the entire team, including, to your point, our designer. And she actually came up with an idea. She was like, "Why don't we do X, Y, Z to change it?" So sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected people. And
Mm-hmm.
I would actually say, if they don't have regular content with your customers, they actually need that information more. The question is how you share it. I would probably never tell my team, I have no idea how we're going to make it through this quarter. Everything is shit. I would tell them, hey, we're not pacing as expected odd numbers. Let's have a brainstorming session. I want you to come up with new ideas on how we can accelerate growth. So it really depends on how you approach it. And that's not lying. I would still show them the numbers. I would still be honest that this is not the best situation to be in. But I would approach it from a positive perspective, from a
Yeah.
learning perspective of how can we fix this? And I would give them the power to help. It feels really annoying that someone tells you, oh, this is the biggest problem we have, but I don't want you to do anything about it. If you hire great people who are motivated, they probably want to help. It's their way to grow and learn. So you want to include them and make sure that they're part of the conversation.
Yeah, and basically, if you have trust in them, you hire them after all. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, you doing the work, right? As you would do without them anyway. So, but in most cases, they might surprise you with something good, because they have the confidence. You hire them, you gave them some task to do. You encourage them, and you give them the freedom. So,
Yeah.
if everybody has that in their work, I guess they would have, better results anytime than if they don't have it.
Yeah, and I mean that's how I grew in my career. My managers gave me opportunities and included me and allowed me to try different things. But I also always knew that I had a security blanket because they always had my back. And this is something I tell my team. No matter what you do, I will always have your back. Whatever happens is my responsibility. So have the freedom to make mistakes. Nothing is a mistake if we learn from it. But what I also encourage them to do, and I think you really need to understand how people learn. Some people really need the hand holding. They really want you to approve every single step. You'll do it a few times, they'll learn, and then they'll have the confidence to do it themselves. Other people are like, give me the goal, I'm going to figure it out, hands off. And once you figure out who needs what, you can really make sure that you align your leadership style with what they need. And that's how you allow them to thrive. Because you know what? Some people actually need that support and they want the communication and they will touch base with you every single step. But that's okay because all you have to do is say yes. It's not about how you're doing the work, it's just you giving them the confirmation that they need. And some of your superstars are just going to go out and do whatever, they think is best. And if you build a good enough relationship, they will come to you if something is wrong. They're not going to try and hide it. They're going to be really honest, and then you can solve problems together. But if you don't take that risk, then you didn't hire great employees. You hired people who execute your orders. And I don't think that's leadership.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great perspective. And I mean, giving them freedom, and just letting them go and do the work can work. If you have uh, A class employees which is not happening. You maybe have one in the company. In most cases, you have none, because
But
those are
why
rare people.
you hired them hopefully?
No, no, no. I want to say something different. But for all the others, they can be great in what they do. But you need to have the pattern for them, you know, to follow. I mean, when I say pattern, I want to say you need to have at least some kind of processes, because then people can have freedom inside that. And if they are not A players, in most cases we have maybe C or D players. It all depends. Not everybody can be a great leader and lead
Yeah.
the others and be one of a kind. So by having the process, it enhances their abilities as well.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny. I don't remember where I read it, but you can think about your team as superstars and rock stars. So superstars are the
Yeah,
people
I
who
remember that.
really,
That's a great one.
yeah. So superstar are the people who need that engagement. They need to do more and try more, and those are very often people who move up the rank and try different things and maybe end up being that leader. And rock stars are people who are really good at what they do and they just want to be experts in their own field. They don't necessarily need you to continue promoting them, but they want to be recognized for what they do. And different times in your career, you may be a rock star and sometimes you may be a superstar. It really depends on your level of comfort and if you're feeling safe and if you have opportunities for growth. So it's okay to have both. I would actually argue you need both because if all of your employees are just trying to move up the ladder, who would do the work? So you need a mix so that you have that engagement, that you have people motivating others, and that you have that innovation. That's actually huge for companies because there's a tendency, especially in the really big corporates, to just do things the same way. And it drives me crazy when I talk to people and like, hey, why are you doing this? And the answer is, I don't know. It's just how we've always done it. So I'm doing it. And you definitely don't want to have that mindset. So you need some of those people to push the boundaries, to ask questions, and to try to do different things.
Yeah, totally agree. It reminded me of an example, like when it was my first time to be a GM. Basically, I came as a rookie to the company, knowing about social media, about digital marketing. Didn't know anything about SEO, and that was the most important part of the work at the time. So I needed to learn a lot, and I was sharing everything, every article, every video, everything on the team Slack. And basically, bit by bit, I became the team leader. I took over the biggest clients, and one day I became the GM. In just 13 months, I've been through that journey. And what was interesting is my perspective at the times. I was the last one coming to the company. I was the first ever GM. There were two owners that didn't consider anybody to be GM material before, and I didn't understand that there are some people who wanted to be in that place, and actually I was somebody that came to the company after them. So there was that, but also when I became the GM, I wanted everybody to accelerate their knowledge, the growth, and everything, and to grow as I'm growing. And I made them, you can read this. I send materials to them, those kind of things. But then I got the feedback, and it wasn't good on some of the things. And I understand, okay, some of the people really want to come to the company, work for 8 hours, do a decent job, and go home. They don't want to move forward, and that's okay for them. That's okay for me to understand. But then, as GM, do I want those kind of people in the company? That's then another question. But what's been good, and it's the thing that you are saying, having, in this case, owners backing me up. I mean, they put me in the GM position and didn't answer any of my calls for 2 months. They told everybody like Nemanja is the one that has all the freedom but all the responsibilities as we have. I didn't know any passwords, process, nothing. So I have to create everything from the start. it slowed us down as a company, but like in 2 months, I got through all of it. I set up all the processes, every single thing, and I learned all the things that that I'm now using in my careers in year after. And I'm like forever grateful for that because
Yeah.
they were able to put the company in the second place and me in the first place, so I can learn some of the things and then we can grow further when I do.
Yeah, and I love that it all started with having an owner's mindset, right? You thought outside of your own role. You thought, how can I help the business as a whole? That included your team, that included other areas. And that's exactly how I was able to level up in my career, always thinking like an owner and not just sticking to my job description, and try to fix problems. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you were hired to do, your goal is to make the company more successful. And I think smart companies or smart managers understand that and empower their team members to do that. I mean, if I hired someone to do X and they want to do X plus Y, that's a very positive ROI. Why would I object? But I think some managers are a little bit scared that maybe their employees will outshine them or that they won't do their work. But again, it all goes back to trust. If you didn't build trust with your employees, if you didn't hire people who are excellent at what they do, and they should actually be better than you at what they do, then you probably didn't hire the best people for the job. So we can probably end with that. It's one of the biggest challenges for managers to hire someone who knows more than them on a specific area. I definitely struggled with it for a while, but once I hired an expert and I saw what they can do and how much I can learn from them, I will never go back. I now try to hire people who know that much more than me because I am not being judged as an executive just on what I do. I'm being judged on what my team does. So I want to have the best team possible and I want to give them all the resources and the tools to do their best job because if they shine, I shine. And I think that's one thing that leaders really need to understand because that's what really makes you, I think, a great manager.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I wouldn't end anything else. To the end, I would just end one thing that I forgot is that one of the owners, we're in Serbia. He was living in Canada, and he came to Serbia for the summer after I was like 3 months in the company, and travel for 300 kilometers to spend a day with me, rookie at the company at the time,
Amazing.
just to get to know me. And I was like, why the fuck is he now coming to spend? And after like 8 or 11 months after that, when they asked me to be a GM, I understood everything, like how it goes and what they have been doing. And like you gotta be grateful for those kind of people that kind of taught you how you can also lead others.
Yeah, and you want to pay it forward, right? You want to do the same for your employees.
Yeah, that's it. Maya, I would now ask people just to, to go back and listen to the full episodes from the start because we talked about so many different things and mentioned so many important points and steps they can use in their career to, to move forward. Not only, as marketers, but also as leaders, as the company owners. And I would like to thank you for being on the show. And tell me one thing: where can people find you? Where can people find information about you? Tell them those things.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's been a blast. And people can find me on LinkedIn. It's Maya Grossman, or just go to my website, mayagrossman.com. You can read about my book, my coaching services, everything you want to know.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll add some links in the description as well. Maya, thank you one more time, guys. There's one message we always say at the end, and this is: keep it funky and see you in another episode.